Hey guys, tonight we are not going to a battlefield or a palace. We are going somewhere much quieter. We're going to explore the life of someone you've probably never heard of. A life that, by all conventional standards, might even be called a bit boring. We're going to follow the quiet journey of Ynes Mexia, a woman who didn't even start her real life until she was 55 years old, in a world obsessed with prodigies and early success. Her story is a quiet and powerful reminder that it's never too late to find your path. And frankly, most of the action-packed figures from history were objectively terrible people to be around, so let's spend some time with a good one. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps other people looking for a quiet story find this little corner of the internet. While you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always so cool to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The fog is rolling in off the bay, a thick, grey blanket that muffles the sounds of San Francisco. You can hear the lonely, mournful sound of a foghead, a long, low note that seems to be the city's own sigh. You pull the collar of your coat tighter around your neck, the damp chill seeping into your bones. It's 1921. You are 50 years old, and you feel adrift, a ship that has lost its rudder in this very fog. You walk. That is what you do most evenings. You follow the steep streets, your shoes making a soft, rhythmic sound on the damp cobblestones. The gas lamps have just been lit, their flames casting soft, hazy halos on the mist. You are walking through a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. A failed marriage that ended in a messy, public divorce. A business venture, a poultry farm that collapsed under the weight of debt and disease. A past in Mexico and Washington, D.C. that feels like a distant, half-remembered dream. You are a woman resetting her life, starting over from a foundation that feels like rubble. As you walk, the sounds of the city wash over you. This is the jazz age, the roaring 20s, a time of frenetic energy. Speakers are yes, and fappers with their short hair and shorter skirts. From an open window somewhere above, you can hear the faint, tinny sound of a jazz piano, a cascade of notes that sounds impossibly cheerful and carefree. It feels like a party you weren't invited to. The world seems to be racing forward, full of youth and wild energy, and you feel utterly out of step. A quiet, solitary figure in a sensible coat, walking through the fog. This is the mainstream image of the era, but it is not your reality. You've been seeing a doctor, a man with kind eyes and a new way of thinking. He doesn't talk about spirits or humors. He talks about the mind. He calls it mental hygiene, a new and fashionable idea that unhappiness isn't a moral failing, but a condition that can be treated with talk, with rest, and with purposeful activity. This is a strange and wonderful new idea, the budding of a science that will one day be called psychotherapy. Your nightly walks are part of his prescription to move, to breathe, to simply be in the world. Historians still debate the very dichotomy you are living. Was the new woman of the 1922s, with her newfound freedoms and bobbed hair, a widespread reality that touched all levels of society? Or was she largely a media creation, a glamorous ideal that had little to do with the lives of most women, especially those who were older, or divorced, or simply trying to piece their lives back together after personal trauma? The historical record is full of images of youthful rebellion, but the quieter stories, the stories of women like you, are harder to find. You pause at the top of a hill, looking down at the lights of the city twinkling in the fog below. Each light is a home, a life, a story. You feel a profound sense of loneliness, but also a tiny, flickering spark of something else, determination. Perhaps the doctor said you needed to find an interest, or passion, something to anchor you. You have tried things. You've joined social clubs, attended lectures. Nothing has stuck. Nothing has quieted the restless, searching feeling in your soul. You continue your walk, the foghorn calling out again from the bay. Your past is a heavy cloak, and you are trying to learn how to set it down. The doctor's prescription is to walk. It's just that you have no idea where you are supposed to be walking to. The walks through the foggy streets of San Francisco become a nightly ritual, a way to measure the slow passing of your days. The city, with its clanging cable cars and distant jazz music, feels like a world that doesn't quite fit you. The doctor's advice to find an interest echoes in your mind, but it feels like an impossible task. You are a woman of 50, a divorcee with a failed business behind you. What passions are you supposed to discover now? One afternoon, looking for anything to fill the empty hours, you find yourself browsing a bulletin board at a local community hall. Tacked among notices for dance lessons and poetry readings is a simple, unassuming flyer. It's for an organization called the Sierra Club. The flyer speaks of group excursions, of walking not on cobblestones, but on dirt trails. It talks about mountains, about forests of redwood and pine, about the range of light, as their famous founder, John Muir, called the Sierra Nevada. On a whim, born more of desperation than genuine enthusiasm, you sign up for a weekend trip. A few weeks later, you find yourself standing at the base of a mountain. You are wearing a heavy wool skirt, a sensible blouse, and a pair of sturdy but unforgiving leather boots. You are surrounded by people who are younger, fitter, and filled with a boundless, almost irritating energy. They speak a language you don't understand, a lexicon of trail names, peak elevations, and shared wilderness jokes. You fail, once again, like an outsider. The hike begins. The first hour is agony. Your lungs burn. The unaccustomed steepness of the trail makes your calf muscles scream in protest. The heavy boots rub your heels raw. You fall behind the main group, your breath coming in ragged gasps. Every part of your body is telling you to turn back, to return to the familiar, foggy solitude of the city. But you don't. You are stubborn. It is the same stubbornness that saw you through the public humiliation of a divorce and the lonely work of a failing farm. You plant your feet, breathe deep, and take another step, and then another. This is the era of the great American outdoor movement. The creation of national parks is still a relatively new idea, and organizations like the Sierra Club are at the forefront of a cultural shift. They are promoting the idea that wilderness is not something to be conquered or feared, but something to be experienced and preserved. This is a mainstream historical development, the birth of modern environmentalism, and you have just, reluctantly, stumbled into the middle of it. After what feels like an eternity, something begins to change. Your breathing evens out. Your legs find a steady, plodding rhythm. The frantic, anxious chatter in your mind, the endless loop of past regrets and future fears, begins to quiet down, replaced by the simple, immediate demands of the trail. Watch your footing. Lean into the slope. Keep moving. You start to notice things. The way the light filters through the high canopy of the pine trees, deappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of gold. The sharp, clean, resinous smell of the earth. The incredible, complex texture of a piece of moss growing on a granite boulder. A small, bright blue flower, no bigger than your thumbnail, pushing its way up through a pile of pine needles. Here's a curious piece of trivia about the early Sierra Club. While it was founded by men, it was remarkably progressive for its time in its inclusion of women. Women hiked, climbed, and camped right alongside the men. The club had to issue guidelines on appropriate hiking attire for women, which usually involved a skirt worn over a pair of blue mosaic garment that was practical for movement, but also maintained a sense of feminine decorum. The debate over whether a woman could, or should, wear trousers in the wilderness was a real and surprisingly heated topic of the time. As you climb higher, the city and its fogs, both literal and metaphorical, seem to fall away. Up here, the air is thin and clear. The world is reduced to simple, elemental things: rock, sky, tree, and the steady, rhythmic beat of your own heart. By the time you reach the group's designated stopping point, a high granite ledge overlooking a vast, silent valley, you are exhausted. But it is a clean, honest exhaustion. It is the weariness of the body, not the soul. You sit on a warm rock, away from the others, and look out at the panorama of jagged peaks and deep, forested canyons. The quiet is absolute, broken only by the whisper of the wind. And in that moment, for the first time in years, you feel a sense of peace. It's not a dramatic revelation. It's a quiet, slow minus dawning realization. This is what the doctor was talking about. This is the interest. This is the anchor. You don't know what it means yet, or where it will lead. You only know that you need more of this. The mountains have called to you, and you have, finally, answered. The feeling you discovered on that high granite ledge doesn't fade when you return to the city. It lingers, a quiet hum beneath the surface of your daily life. The mountains have planted a seed in you. The weekend hikes with the Sierra Club become your lifeline, the anchor you were so desperately seeking. You discover a physical resilience you never knew you had. Your lungs grow stronger, your legs leaner. You learn the names of the peaks, the trails, and the trees. The world of nature, which was once just a green and differentiated background, is beginning to resolve into a place of specific and fascinating detail. This newfound passion leads you to a new and even more terrifying mountain college. You want to understand what you are seeing. You want to know the real names of the flowers you encounter on the trail, not just the little blue one. You want to understand the systems that connect the moss to the tree to the soil to the mountain. This desire, this pure, unadulterated curiosity, propels you to make a decision that is, for a woman of your age and social standing in 1921, utterly bizarre. You enroll as a special student at the University of California, Berkeley. You are 51 years old. You step onto the Berkeley campus, and the feeling of being an outsider returns with a vengeance. The campus is a sea of youth. Young men in tweed jackets and young women in fashionable cloche hats hurry past, their arms full of books, their faces full of the easy confidence of those who believe the world is just beginning. They move in chattering, laughing groups, their conversations a whirlwind of fraternity parties, football games, and anxieties about upcoming exams. You, in your sensible dress and with the fine lines of 50 years etched around your eyes, feel like a ghost from another era. You are old enough to be their mother, in some cases, their grandmother. You walk through the grand arches of Sattergate, your heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and pure, unadulterated terror. What are you doing here? You find your way to the registration hall, a vast, echoing chamber filled with the chaotic energy of hundreds of students. You stand in line, your hands clasped tightly in front of you, feeling the curious, sideways glances of the students around you. They are not unkind, just confused. You are an anomaly, a disruption in their predictable world. This is a mainstream historical moment for women in higher education. The number of women attending college was increasing dramatically in the 1920s, but these students were overwhelmingly young, and they were often channeled into specific, appropriate fields like teaching, nursing, or home economics. An older, divorced woman pursuing a degree in a hard science was a rarity of the highest order. There is a strange and debated aspect of this era of coal-miners education. While women were allowed in the classroom, a complex and often unwritten set of social rules governed their interactions. There were prescribed social distances to be maintained, specific ways to address professors, and a general expectation that the woman, while present, should not be too loud, too ambitious, or too challenging to the male minus-dominated academic order. Historians debate whether this environment was a genuinely liberating space for women or a more subtle form of containment, allowing them access but limiting their full participation. You finally reach the front of the line and speak to a registrar, a harried minus-looking man with a green eye shade. You explain what you want to do. You want to take classes in the botany department. He looks at your paperwork, then up at you, his expression a mixture of surprise and mild pity. He probably assumes you are a wealthy eccentric, a bored society matron looking for a new hobby. He stamps your form with a heavy, final minus-sounding thump, and just like that, you are a college student. You walk out of the hall, Clutching your class schedule, you are officially enrolled in introductory botany. You look at the swarm of young people around you, and the feeling of being an outsider is still there. But it's joined by something else now, a fierce, quiet sense of purpose. You may be older, you may be out of place, but you are here for a reason. You are here to learn. The mountain you need to climb now is not made of granite, but of knowledge. Your first day of Botany 101 feels less like an academic pursuit and more like an exercise in humility. Use it in a vast, tiered lecture hall, a steep amphitheater of dull, carved wood. The room smells of chalk dust, old paper, and the faint, sweet scent of formaldehyde from the labs down the hall. You have chosen a seat in the back row, hoping to be as inconspicuous as possible, a grey bird in a flock of vibrant, noisy sparrows. The professor is a man named Willis Jepson, a towering figure in the world of California botany. He is a living legend, a man who has walked every corner of the state and written the definitive books on its flora. He strides into the lecture hall, his presence immediately silencing the undergraduate chatter. He is energetic, passionate, and speaks with a booming voice that fills the entire room. He talks about plant morphology, about the intricate architecture of stems, leaves, and flowers. He uses words you have never heard before: petiole, sepal, stipule, raceme. The words sound harsh and foreign, a sacred code to a world you desperately want to enter. And then comes the Latin. The professor begins to write on the massive calcboard, his chalk stick flying, leaving a trail of elegant, splintery square, Rosaceae, Asteraceae, Fabaceae, family, genus, species. This is the Linnean system of binomial nomenclature, the universal language of botany. It is the great, powerful tool, developed in the 18th century, that allows a botanist in California to communicate precisely with a botanist in England or Brazil. It brings order to the beautiful, chaotic world of plants. This is the absolute bedrock of mainstream botanical science, the first and most important lesson you must learn. For you, it is a nightmare. The Latin names are a jumble of incomprehensible syllables. They are dry, academic, and seemingly disconnected from the living, breathing plants you've come to love on your hikes. The vibrant red of the Indian paintbrush is reduced to costylea. The cheerful yellow of the California poppy becomes Escocholia califenricum. It feels like a betrayal, like the soul of the flower is being lost in a cloud of dusty, dead language. You spend your evenings in the library, hunched over thick, heavy textbooks, your head swimming with terminology. You struggle to memorize the names, the classifications, the endless, intricate details of plant anatomy. The young students around you seem to absorb it all effortlessly, their minds still flexible and trained for this kind of rote memorization. Your mind, at 51, feels stiffer, less pliable. You feel a profound sense of discouragement. Perhaps you were wrong. Perhaps this world is not for you. Here's a small, quirky detail about university life at the time. Many science classes, including botany, had a mandatory drawing component. Students were expected to keep a detailed sketchbook, not just for artistic expression, but as a tool for scientific observation. You would have to sit for hours with a single flower or leaf, rendering its structures with precise pencil lines. This practice, now largely replaced by photography, forced a slow, intensely focused kind of looking, a deep communion with the subject. It was a fusion of art and science. One evening, struggling to draw the complex reproductive parts of a lily, you have a moment of crisis. The Latin names feel like a wall you cannot climb. But then you look, really look, at the flower in front of you. You see the delicate curve of a petal, the dusting of golden pollen on an anther, the elegant architecture of the stigma. You forget the Latin name. You just see the thing itself, in all its intricate, functional beauty. And you realize the language isn't the point. The language is just a tool, a handle to grasp the knowledge. The real point is this: the looking, the patient, careful, reverent observation of the organism. The Latin is not meant to replace the beauty, but to reveal it, to give you a framework for understanding its structure and its place in the grand order of things. The historical debate here is a subtle one, played out in the history of science education. Was the intense focus on Latin names and rote memorization the most effective way to teach botany? Or did it, as you initially felt, alienate students and stifle a more intuitive, holistic appreciation for nature? Later generations of educators would argue for a more ecology-based approach, starting with the big picture of environments and relationships, rather than the small-scale details of classification. You are living through the height of the classical, taxonomical approach. You take a deep breath, you pick up your pencil, you will learn the dead language. You will memorize the arcane terms. You will do it because it is the price of admission. It is the key that will unlock the deeper understanding you crave. The wall is still there, but now you have found a few handholds. You will climb it, one Latin name at a time. The fog of Latin names and botanical jargon begins, ever so slowly, till now you spend countless hours in the university's Herbarium, a quiet, library-like space filled with tall wooden cabinets. The air smells of old paper, dried plants, and the faint, mothball-like scent of chemical preservatives. Inside these cabinets are hundreds of thousands of pressed, dried plant specimens, each mounted on a sheet of stiff paper, each with a small, neatly written label detailing its name, its collector, and the location where it was found. It is a library of life, a silent, catalogued ghost of the state's flora. You pull out a specimen sheet. It's a flower you recognize from your hikes, a vibrant blue leuci, but seeing it here, pressed flat, its color faded to a dusty purple. You feel that same sense of disappointment you felt in the lecture hall. It feels removed from its wild, living context. The work is tedious. You compare the specimen to the drawings in your textbook, counting the stamens, examining the shape of the leaves, trying to match the dead thing in front of you with the dry description on the page. Your real education, you soon realize, will not happen in a lecture hall or a library of dried plants. It will happen outside. The botany department regularly organizes weekend field trips for its students. These are not the casual, recreational hikes of the Sierra Club. These are scientific expeditions in miniature. You sign up for the very first one you can. On a bright Saturday morning, you find yourself in a dusty, sun-baked canyon in the hills east of the bay. Professor Jepson leads the small group of students. He is a different man out here. The booming lecturer is gone, replaced by an energetic, almost boyishly enthusiastic guide. He moves through the landscape with an easy, practiced gait, his eyes constantly scanning the ground, the rock faces, the shaded creek beds. He suddenly stops and points with his walking stick at a small, unassuming green plant growing in the shade of a rock. "All right," he says to the group of students clustered around him. "Who can tell me what this is?" The students, who were so confident in the classroom, are now hesitant. They squint at the plant. One of them hazards a guess. "Is it some kind of fern?" Jepson laughs, a big, booming sound that echoes in the canyon. "Hey, good guess. It has the finely divided leaves of a fern. But look closer." He kneels down, his movements surprisingly agile for such a large man, and points to a cluster of tiny, almost invisible yellow flowers. No fern has flowers. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a member of the parsley family, the Apias. See the amble? He traces the shape of the flower cluster, which radiates out from a central point like the ribs of an umbrella. This is the moment of revelation. This is where the classroom jargon connects with the living world. The dry, academic word umbel suddenly has a physical reality. You can see it. You can touch it. You understand, in a way you never could from a book, what it means. This is the mainstream pedagogical practice of a field science, the essential, irreplaceable value of hands-on, in situ learning. The day is spent like this. You walk, you observe, and you collect. When you find a plant that the professor deems worthy of collection, you perform a careful ritual. Using a small trowel, you gently dig up the entire plot, making sure to get the roots, which are often crucial for identification. You shake the dirt off, record the location and date in a small notebook, and then carefully place a plant between the pages of a field press to pieces of wood connected by straps, filled with sheets of blotting paper and newspaper. Here's a small, quirky detail of botanical collection. The choice of newspaper was surprisingly important. You needed paper that was absorbent but didn't transfer its ink too easily onto the delicate plant tissues. The cheap, rough paper of daily newspapers was often ideal. Botanists of the future will sometimes be able to date whole, unlabeled specimens simply by the fragments of newsprint that adhered to them, a kind of accidental historical record. As the sun begins to set, you sit with the other students, your plant press full, your notebook filled with scribbled notes. You are tired, dusty, and scratched from thorny bushes, and you have never felt more alive. The tedious work of the herbarium now makes sense. You are not just collecting dead things. You are creating a permanent record of a living thing in a specific time and place. You are contributing a tiny, single data point to a vast, collective scientific project. The debate among historians of science often revolves around the figure of the lone genius, but your experience today reveals a different truth. Science is a community effort. It is built upon the patient, often anonymous, labor of countless individuals like yourself, each one collecting, pressing, and labeling, adding their small piece to the great puzzle. You look at the small, humble plant pressed by your side. It is no longer a collection of weeds. It is a treasure chest, and you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that this is what you want to do. You don't just want to see the plants, you want to collect them. The field trips become the center of your universe. The tedious hours in the herbarium are now infused with purpose. Each dried, pressed flower is no longer a ghost, but a puzzle, a memory of a sun-drenched canyon or a foggy coastal bluff. You are not just a student anymore. You are becoming a botanist. You develop a reputation among the professors and your fellow students as a tireless and enthusiastic collector. You are the old lady. Yes, but you are the one who will climb the steepest slope or scramble into the thorniest thicket to get a specimen. But your ambition, once kindled, grows into a bonfire. The weekend trips are no longer enough. You look at the maps in the university library, at the vast, green, unexplored regions to the south. You look at the herbarium cabinets and see where the gaps are, the places from which no specimens have ever been collected. Your gaze keeps returning to one place in particular, Mexico. It is your birthplace, a country you left as a child, a place that exists more in hazy memory than in reality. For the botanists at Berkeley, it is a land of immense scientific interest, a place where the flora of North and South America meet, creating a unique and largely unstudied biodiversity. Expeditions have gone there, of course, but they have been few and far between, mounted by large institutions, led by men. A new idea begins to form in your mind, an idea so audacious, so contrary to every convention of your time, that it almost makes you laugh. You will go to Mexico. Not with the university, not as an assistant to a male professor. You will go by yourself. You will fund your own expedition. You will be the collector. You are 55 years old. You begin to make your plans. This is not a whim. It is a calculated, professional undertaking. You use the small inheritance you have left, the last remnant of your past life, to finance the trip. You spend weeks studying maps, reading the accounts of the few explorers who have traveled in the western regions of Mexico. You write to other herbaria, asking what specimens they lack from the region, so you can make your trip as scientifically valuable as possible. This decision marks a turning point, not just for you, but in the context of scientific exploration. The history of botany is filled with the names of great male explorers. Banks, Darwin, Humboldt. Women have been involved, but often as illustrators, patrons, or as the wives and daughters of collectors, working in the background. A woman of 55, with no formal degree, launching her own solo international collecting expedition was, to put it mildly, unheard of. This is the mainstream historical context. You are, without intending to be, a pioneer, The news of your plan ripples through the small, insular world of the Berkeley Botany department. The reactions are a mixture of awe, amusement, and deep, paternalistic concern. Professor Jepson, your mentor, is supportive but worried. He knows the rigors of fieldwork. He writes letters of introduction for you to botanists in Mexico, but his letters are tinged with a tone that suggests yes, not entirely confident you will succeed. Others are less kind. You overhear the whispers of other students. They think you are eccentric, reckless, perhaps a little mad. A woman your age, traveling alone in the bandit-infested wilds of Mexico. It's preposterous. And here's a quirky and specific detail of the time. One of the greatest concerns was not bandits or disease, but the simple issue of logistics. How would a lone woman manage the mules? How would she negotiate with local guides? How would she carry the heavy, cumbersome equipment, the plant presses, the drying papers, the collecting tins? These were seen as men's work, tasks requiring a physical strength and a worldly competence that a woman of your class and age was simply not supposed to possess. The debate about women's capabilities was not just a social one. It often bled into scientific discourse. Some prominent male scientists of the era publicly argued that women were temperamentally unsuited for the rigors of scientific discovery, that their minds were too emotional, not logical enough for objective observation. Every step you take in planning your expedition is a quiet, deliberate refutation of this deeply ingrained prejudice. You ignore the whispers. You ignore the concerned looks. You are filled with a single-minded purpose that leaves no room for doubt. You spend your days packing, not dresses and hats, but reams of newspaper for pressing, sturdy canvas collecting bags, and a small, portable stove for drying your specimens in the damp climate. Your luggage is not the luggage of a tourist. It is the field kit of a professional scientist. The day of your departure arrives. You stand on the platform of a train station, a small, determined figure in a practical traveling suit, surrounded by your carefully packed crates and presses. You are leaving behind the fogs of San Francisco, the quiet halls of the university, and the comfortable routines you have built. You are stepping off a cliff, into the unknown. You are 55 years old, and your life is finally beginning. The train journey south is a long, rattling, clattering affair. The familiar, cool green hills of California slowly give way to the arid, sun-baked landscapes of the borderlands. You sit by the window for hours, watching the world slide by, your mind a mixture of nervous anticipation and quiet resolve. The last vestiges of your old life, the life of a San Francisco divorcee, a student, a social club member, are being left behind with every mile of trek. You cross the border into Mexico. The air itself seems to change. It becomes warmer, dustier, and filled with a symphony of new sounds and smells. The sharp, unfamiliar Spanish of the train porters. The scent of wood smoke and roasting chilies drifting in through the open window. It is the country of your birth, but it feels like a foreign land, a place you know only through the fractured, sepia-stoned memories of a child. Your destination is a small town called Mazatl, on the Pacific coast in the state of Sinaloa. From there, you plan to travel inland, into the rugged, little-explored mountains of the Sierra Madre Occidental. When you arrive, the heat hits you like a physical wall. The town is a vibrant, chaotic explosion of light. Cobblestone streets are thronged with people, men in wide-brimmed straw hats, women with dark shawls, and children kicking a dusty ball. Brightly painted adobe buildings line the streets, their plaster peeling in the intense sun. You are the only person who looks like you, a lone, older American woman in a practical, sweat-stained traveling suit. You attract stares. They are not hostile, but they are intensely curious. You feel that familiar sense of being an outsider, but it is different now. It is not the isolating feeling you had at Berkeley. Here, it is simply a fact, a condition of your work. You are not here to blend in. You are here to collect. Your first and most crucial task is to hire a guide. You cannot do this alone. You need someone who knows the land, who can speak the local dialects, who can manage the mules, and who can negotiate your passage through a landscape where a stranger is an object of both suspicion and opportunity. This is the established, mainstream protocol for any scientific expedition of the era. The lone explorer was rarely truly alone. They were supported by a network of local knowledge and labor. You find your way to a dusty cantina, following a tip from a local merchant. There, you meet a man named Remigio. He is a small, weary man with skin the color of worn leather and eyes that seem to see everything. He is a local our hero, a mule driver, a man who has spent his entire life crisscrossing the mountains you want to explore. Your negotiation is a delicate dance. You speak your formal, textbook Spanish. He replies in a rapid, colloquial dialect that you struggle to understand. You explain what you want to travel into the mountains for several weeks, to stop frequently, to collect plants. He looks at you as if you are mad. Why would anyone want to pay him to go into the mountains to collect weeds? People pay him to transport goods, to move silver from the mines, or to bring supplies to remote villages. This is a strange and wonderful new form of insanity, and here lies a fascinating, unwritten chapter in the history of science, the role of local guides. These men and women, the Sherpas, the porters, the R8 were the essential, and often uncredited, co-minus discoverers on these great expeditions. They possessed a deep, non-minus academic knowledge of the landscape. They knew the safe trails, the locations of fresh water, and, most importantly, they knew the plants. They might know the Latin names, but they knew which plants were edible, which were poisonous, and which were used in traditional medicine. The debate among post-minus colonial historians of science continues to this day. How much of the discovery attributed to Western botanists was actually just a translation of this pre-minus existing local knowledge? You finally strike a deal with Remigio. You will pay him a fair wage. You will pay for the mules and the supplies. He looks at you, a mixture of disbelief and amusement in his eyes, and spits on the ground to seal the bargain. He agrees to meet you the next morning with 3 mules, one for you, one for him, and one for your equipment. That night, you sleep in a small, stuffy room in a local inn. The sounds of the town, the barking of dogs, the distant strumming of a guitar, the laughter from the cantina filter in through the wooden shutters. You lie awake, your heart pounding. You have done it. You have taken the first, irreversible step. You are no longer just planning an expedition. You are on one. Tomorrow, you ride into the mountains. The next morning, the sun rises with a fierce, uncompromising intensity, bleaching the color from the sky. Remigio is waiting for you in the dusty courtyard of the inn, just as he promised. With him are 3 mules, their expressions a perfect portrait of stoic indifference. They are loaded with your life for the next several weeks: canvas sacks of beans, rice, and dried meat, water skins, and, most importantly, your precious collecting equipment, the bulky wooden plant press and the reams of newspaper. Remigio helps you on to your mule. You have ridden horses before, but a mule is a different creature entirely. It is small, stoccaio, and its movements are choppy and jarring. You feel awkward and unsteady as you settle into the hard leather saddle. You, a 55-year-old woman who just a few years ago was attending social club meetings in San Francisco, are now perched atop a mule, about to venture into the Sierra Madre. The absurdity of the situation is not lost on you. You set off, leaving the small town behind. The trail is not a road, but a narrow, winding track of dust and rock that begins to climb almost immediately. The world of the coast, with its palm trees and humid air, falls away, replaced by a landscape of thorny scrub, twisted acacia trees, and towering, organ-minus pipe cacti that stand like silent, multi-minus armed sentinels. The ride is grueling. The sun beats down on your head, and you are grateful for the wide minus-brimmed hat you wear. The mule steady, plodding gait becomes a monotonous, body-minus jarring rhythm. Dust, kicked up by the animal's hooves, coats your clothes, your face, your tongue. It is a fine, reddish powder, and it tastes of the very earth you have come to study. This is the reality of 19th and early 20th century fieldwork, a reality that is often glossed over in the heroic published accounts. It was not a glamorous pursuit. It was a slow, arduous, and often deeply uncomfortable process. The history of exploration is a history of saddle sores, insect bites, and questionable food. This is the mainstream, unromantic truth of life on the trail. Remigio rides ahead of you, utterly at home in this environment. He seems to be a part of the landscape, his body moving in perfect sync with his mule. He never speaks, except to murmur a soft command to the animals, or to point out a landmark with a nod of his chin. As you climb higher, the vegetation begins to change. The dry scrub gives way to sparse forests of oak and pine. You are entering a new ecological zone. Your botanist's eye, now trained by your years at Berkeley, is constantly scanning, observing, identifying. You see a flash of brilliant trader flower you don't recognize. You call out, "Stop!" Remigio sighs, the long minus suffering sigh of a man healing with a madwoman, and brings the small caravan to a halt. You slide, awkwardly, off your mule, your legs stiff and shaky. You approach the flower, your heart beating with the thrill of the hunt. You kneel in the dust, pulling out your hand lens to examine the intricate structure of the petals. It is something new, something you have never seen before. You carefully dig it up with your trowel, wrap its roots in a damp cloth, and place it in your collecting tin. You do this a dozen times in the first few hours. Each stop is a small victory, a new treasure for your collection. Remigio watches you with a mixture of patience and utter bafflement. And here's a quirky detail about the practice of botany. There has always been a tension, a debate, within the field between the splitters and the lumpers. A splitter is a botanist who tends to see every small variation in a plant as evidence of a new, distinct species. A lumper, on the other hand, tends to group plants with minor differences together into a single, more broadly defined species. This is not just a matter of personality. It reflects deep philosophical differences about the nature of species themselves. As you collect, you are constantly making these judgments. Is this just a variation of a known plant? Or is it something entirely new? As the day wears on, the physical toll of the journey becomes more apparent. Your back aches, your knees throb, the muscles in your legs, unused to this specific kind of strain, feel like they are on fire. You are no longer just an observer of the landscape. You are a part of it, your body subject to its harsh, uncompromising demands. Late in the afternoon, you reach a small, flat clearing by a trickle of a stream. This, Remigio announces, is where you will make camp. You slide off your mule, every bone in your body protesting. You have survived your first day on the trail. You look back down the winding path you have traveled. The world you came from seems very far away. The trail has become a narrow, precarious ledge etched into the side of a steep canyon. To your left is a wall of sheer rock, rising to an unforgiving blue sky. To your right is a stomach minus churning drop into the valley below, a dizzying perspective of treetops and distant, shimmering heat. The mule, however, is unconcerned. It places each hoof with a deliberate, unnerving confidence. Its body is solid, reliable machine built for this very terrain. You, on the other hand, are very concerned. You are trying not to look down. You focus on the back of Remigio's head, on the steady, swaying rhythm of his mule, on the dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight. You have been riding for days, and while your body has begun to acclimate to the saddle, your nerves have not yet acclimated to the sheer drops. It happens in an instant, with no warning. Your mule, which has been a model of stoic reliability, suddenly shies. Perhaps a snake slithered across the path. Perhaps a loose rock gave way under its hoof. You will never know. One moment, you are upright. The next, the world tilts violently. You lose your grip on the saddle horn. A cry of surprise caught in your throat. You are airborne for a heart-minus stopping second. A clumsy, falling body against the vast, indifferent landscape. You land, not in the terrifying abyss to your right, but against the hard and forgiving rock wall to your left. The impact is a jarring, explosive shock that knocks the wind out of you. You feel a sharp, white minus hot lance of pain shoot through your side. You slide down the rock face and land in a heap in the dusty trail. The world is spinning, confused blur of pain and bright, hot sunlight. For a moment, there is only the pain, a blinding, all minus consuming agony in your chest. You lie gasping for breath, each inhalation a new wave of fire. Remigio is instantly off his mule and at your side, his usual gruff indifference replaced by a look of genuine alarm. He speaks to you in rapid, worried Spanish, but you cannot understand the words. You can only focus on the simple, overwhelming reality of the pain. This is the great, unwritten risk of all fieldwork. The published accounts of explorers often focus on dramatic encounters with wildlife or hostile tribes, but the mundane, everyday danger is a fall from a horse, a sudden illness, a badly infected cut were far more common and often just as deadly. This is the mainstream reality of exploration. It was dangerous not because of exotic threats, but because you were far from help, and a simple accident could quickly become a life-threatening crisis. Remigio, with a gentleness that surprises you, helps you to a sitting position. You try to take a deep breath, and the pain sharpens into an unbearable spike. You know, with a sickening certainty, that something is broken. A rib, maybe two. A wave of despair washes over you, even more powerful than the pain. It's over. The expedition, your great, audacious dream, has ended here. In the dust of this remote mountain trail, you will have to go back. You will have to return to Mexico, and then to San Francisco. Defeated, you think of the knowing, pitying looks of the professors at Berkeley, of the whispers you tried so hard to ignore. They were right. You are a foolish old woman. But then, as you sit there, cradling your injured side, another feeling begins to surface, pushing back against the despair. It is that same stubbornness you discovered on your first hike with the Sierra Club, the same quiet grit that got you through your divorce in the lonely halls of the university. You have not come this far only to be defeated by a clumsy fall. Here's a small, quirky detail about the medical practices of the time. There was no field kit with sterile bandages and painkillers. The treatment for broken ribs was simple. You bind the chest tightly to restrict movement, and you endure. Remigio, using his own session strip of cloth from your supplies, expertly wraps your torso. The binding provides a small measure of stability, but does little to dull the constant, grinding ache. The question of what to do next hangs in the air. The unstated assumption is that you'll turn back. Remigio looks at you, his dark eyes asking the question he doesn't speak. You look at the trail ahead, winding its way deeper into the mountains. You look at your precious plant press, strapped to the pack mule, and you make a decision. Head along to you. You say the word a painful gasp. Forward. Remigio stares at you for a long moment, a new expression in his eyes. It is not pity, not amusement. It is respect. He nods, a single, sharp dip of his chin. The debate among historians about the psychology of explorers is a fascinating one. What drives a person to endure such hardship? Is it a quest for fame, for scientific glory, for wealth, or is it something more personal, a deep, internal need to test oneself against the limits of the world and the self? For you, in this moment, it is not about fame or even science. It is a simple, this or refusal to be broken. Getting back on the mule is an exercise in pure agony. Every jolt of the animal's gait sends a fresh wave of fire through your ribs. But you do it. You ride on. Your body a symphony of pain. Your jaw clenched with a determination as hard and unyielding as the rock face you fell against. The fall has not ended your expedition. It has truly begun it. The days that follow the fall blur into a haze of quiet, persistent pain. Every breath is a negotiation. Every jolt of the mule a fresh insult to your battered ribs. You move through the stunning, indifferent landscape of the Sierra Madre like a ghost. Your awareness shrunk to the small, intense world of your own body. But you do not stop. The expedition continues, powered now by a fuel that is stronger than enthusiasm sheer, bloody-minded grit. Your routine, dictated by the rhythm of the trail and the needs of your work, becomes your salvation. In the evening, when Remigio finally calls a halt and makes camp, your own, more delicate work begins, while he tends to the mules and builds a small, efficient fire. You slide, groaning, from your saddle and turn your attention to the day's treasures. This is the ardent science of the botanist in the field, a ritual that has been practiced for centuries. You retrieve the plants you collected during the day, each one carefully stored in your tin collecting box to keep it from wilting. Use it by the fire, the warm light pushing back the immense, star-minus filled darkness of the Mexican night, and you begin to process your specimens. Each plant must be carefully arranged and pressed. This is a delicate, almost artistic process. You lay a sheet of newspaper on the ground. On top of it, you place a sheet of absorbent blotting paper. Then, you take a plant. You must arrange it so that all its key features are visible. You spread the leaves so they don't overlap. You turn one leaf over so that both the upper and lower surfaces will be visible on the final specimen. You carefully arrange the delicate petals of a flower so they will dry flat, not in a crumpled ball. If the plant is too long for the paper, you must fold it, carefully, into a V or an N shape, a kind of botanical origami. Once the plant is perfectly arranged, you cover it with another sheet of blotting paper and another sheet of newspaper. You have created a plant sandwich. You repeat this process for every specimen you collected, building a stack of these sandwiches. Finally, you place the entire stack into your wooden field press and tighten the straps as much as your raking ribs will allow. The press squeezes the moisture from the plants, preserving their form and color as best as possible. This is the mainstream, time-honored method of creating an herbarium specimen, a technique that would be instantly recognizable to botanists 100 years before you and 100 years after. But the work isn't done. You open your field notebook. For each specimen, you must record the crucial data. This is as important as the plant itself. You write the date. You write the location. As precisely as you can Sierra Madre Occidental, near the village of Charcias, on a north-minus facing slope at approximately 5,000 feet. You describe the habitat shaded oak forest, in rocky soil, and you note the characteristics that will be lost in the drying process: the exact color of the flower, the scent of the leaves, the presence of milky sap. And here's a quirky, but important, detail. You also assign each specimen a unique collection number. You start with number 1, and you will continue counting, sequentially, for the rest of your collecting career. This number, written in your notebook and on a small tag attached to the plant, will link the physical specimen to your field notes forever. It is the plant's unique identity, its scientific fingerprint. The debate among historians of science about fieldwork often centers on the idea of objectivity. Were these collectors truly objective observers of nature? Or did their own biases, their own search for the new and the exotic, shape what they chose to collect? It's a question that's impossible to answer definitively. As you choose which plants to collect and which to leave behind, you're acting as a filter, your own interests and knowledge shaping the scientific record you are creating. After a few hours, the pressing is done, the notebook is filled, the day's work is finally, truly complete. You hand the stack of damp newspapers and blotters to Remigio. He has a small, portable stove, and he will spend a part of the night carefully drying the papers over the fire, so they can be used again tomorrow. His role has evolved from a simple mule driver to an essential partner in your scientific enterprise. You lie down on your bedroll near the fire, the pain in your ribs a dull, constant poignant. You look up at the brilliant, unpolluted river of stars above. You have survived another day. You have turned the wild, living things of this mountain into data, into knowledge, into a permanent record. In the face of your own physical fragility, this act of creation, of bringing order to the beautiful chaos of nature, feels like a profound and necessary act of defiance. One afternoon, you are exploring a steep, humid ravine, a place the sun barely touches. Remigio is waiting with the mules on the ridge above, having declared the slope too dangerous for the animals. You are moving slowly. Your ribs are constant, Dole, using your walking stick for balance. The air in the ravine is thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. It is a world of green moss minus covered rocks, ferns dripping with moisture, and the deep, shaded leaves of unfamiliar trees. You are looking for fungi. Your collection is strong in flowering plants. But you know the Herbarium at Berkeley has very few specimens of the fungi of this region. So you scan the dull, rotting logs in the damp soil, your eyes searching for the strange, alien forms of mushrooms and bracket fungi. Your gaze falls upon a patch of small, daisy minus, like white flowers growing in a cluster on the forest floor. They are pretty, but you almost dismiss them. They look like a common aster, a type of flower you have seen 1,000 times in 100 different variations. It is probably a species you have already collected. Your mind, trained now in the art of botanical trade, is about to move on, to continue the search for the more unusual fungi. But something makes you pause. There is a subtle, almost imperceptible wrongness about them. You kneel down, the movement sending a familiar twinge through your side. You lean in closer, pulling out the small hand lens that has become a permanent extension of your eye. You examine the flower head. It has the classic composite structure of the Aster family. Asteraceae, central disc of tiny florets surrounded by a ring of larger, petal minus like ray florets. This is the largest and one of the most complex families of flowering plants, a mainstream subject of study for any serious botanist. You have studied their characteristics for hundreds of hours. But this one is different. You look at the small, leaf minus-like structures at the base of the flower head. The bracts that form the involucra. Their arrangement is unusual. The way they overlap, their shape, their texture. It doesn't match any of the major tribes or genera of Asteraceae that you have memorized. You examine the leaves, the stem. Every part of the plant is subtly, but distinctly different from anything you know. Your heart begins to beat a little faster. A thrill, cold and sharp, runs through you. This is not just a new species. The differences are too fundamental. You know, with a sudden, gut-minus wrenching certainty, that this could be a new genus, an entirely new branch on the family tree of life, a type of plant never before described by science. Here's a small, weirdly specific detail for you. The discovery of a new species is exciting for a botanist. The discovery of a new genus is a once minus and minus a minus lifetime event. It is like discovering not just a new person, but a whole new, previously unknown family of people. It is a discovery of a far greater magnitude, and it will earn the discoverer a permanent place in the annals of botany. You know you must collect it. This will be the most important specimen of your entire trip, perhaps of your entire life. You take out your trowel and begin to dig, your hands trembling slightly. You are not just a collector now. You are an explorer at the very frontier of knowledge. The process of formally describing and naming a new genus is long and complex. You know you can't do it alone. You will need the help of the specialists back at Berkeley, the taxonomists who have dedicated their lives to the study of this one family. They will have to dissect the flowers under a microscope, compare its anatomy to thousands of other specimens, and consult the vast library of botanical literature to be absolutely certain that it is new. And this is where a fascinating historical debate about scientific discovery comes into play. What constitutes a discovery? Is it the moment you, the field collector, first lay eyes on the organism and recognize its uniqueness? Or is it the moment the specialist back in the lab publishes the formal description in a scientific journal? The history of science is filled with quiet tensions and sometimes open conflicts between the field collectors who did the dangerous work of finding the specimens and the university-based scientists who did the work of formally analyzing and naming them, and who often receive the majority of the credit. You carefully lift the plant from the soil, its entire root system intact. You wrap it in damp moss with the reverence of a priest handling a sacred relic. You will press several examples, and you will even try to preserve some of the flowers in a small vial of alcohol, so their 3-dimensional structure can be studied back at the lab. As you climb out of the ravine, your aches and pains are forgotten. You are holding something that no scientist has ever seen before. You are carrying a secret, a small, white minus flowered secret that you will reveal to the world. In this moment, you are not a 55-year-old woman with a difficult past. You are a scientist. You are a discoverer. And you feel a sense of purpose so profound and so pure that it shines brighter than the hot Mexican sun. The discovery of the mysterious white flower changes the tone of the expedition. The daily hardships are still there, the aching roots, the monotonous food, the biting insects, but now they are underscored by a new, thrilling sense of purpose. You are no longer just cataloguing the known. You are mapping the unknown. This newfound excitement also changes your relationship with Remigio. He has watched your patient, almost obsessive, daily ritual of collecting and pressing plants with a kind of detached amusement. He sees you as his patrone, his eccentric American employer. But after you found the strange white flower, after he saw the look of pure, focused intensity in your eyes, something in his attitude shifts. He begins to see you not just as an employer, but as a fellow professional, albeit in a field he cannot comprehend. He starts to participate. One evening, as you are pressing your specimens by the fire, he approaches you. He holds out a leafy branch from a small, gnarled tree. He says, "This one, the women in my village, they make a tea from the leaves for a fever." You take the branch and examine it. You recognize the family. It's a type of verbena, but the species is unfamiliar to you. You had walked past a dozen of these trees today without giving them a second glance. To you, they were just part of the green background. To him, they were a pharmacy. This is a turning point. You realize that Remigio possesses a key you have been missing. He carries in his head a library of knowledge that is completely different from the one you learned at Berkeley. His is a practical, ancestral knowledge, passed down through generations. He doesn't know the Latin names, but he knows the plants' uses, their stories, their place in the human landscape. This is the mainstream reality of ethnobotaning, the study of how people and plants interact, a field that was only just beginning to be recognized as a formal science in your time. You start to ask him questions. As you ride, you point to different plants. "What is this called?" you ask. He tells you its local name, a word in Spanish or sometimes in a regional indigenous language. "What is it for?" you ask. He becomes your teacher. That thorny bush with the bitter berries, it is used to make a poison for stunning fish in the river. That unassuming weed with the sticky leaves, it can be used to soothe insect bites. The tree with the peeling red bark, its bark is used to tan leather. Here's a small, quirky detail about this kind of knowledge. It is often incredibly specific and localized. A plant that is considered a powerful medicine in one valley might be completely ignored in the next. The uses and names can change from one village to another, creating a complex and fascinating mosaic of human minus plant interaction. You begin to add this information to your field notebook. Next to your precise scientific observations, leaves ovate, margins serrate, you start to add Remigio's knowledge local name palo di fever, used for fevers. You are now creating a record that is not just botanical, but anthropological. You are bridging to different ways of knowing the world. Of course, the relationship between Western science and indigenous knowledge has a long and complicated history, and it is a subject of constant debate among historians and anthropologists. For centuries, Western explorers often dismissed local knowledge as superstition or old wives' tales. They would collect a plant used for medicine, but they would only value the physical specimen, not the knowledge about its use that came with it. The local informant, like Remigio, was often relegated to a footnote, if they were mentioned at all. You, however, are different. Perhaps it is your age, your gender, or your own experience as an outsider, but you have a humility that allows you to see the value in what Remigio knows. You understand that he is not just your guide, he is your collaborator. One day, he leads you off the main trail, up a steep, rocky path to a hidden spring. There, growing in the damp, shaded earth, is a plant he calls La Hierbadelsus too, the herb of fright. He explains that when a person has had a great shock or a terrible scare, a healer will make a tea from this plant to calm their spirit and bring their soul back into their body. You look at the small, delicate fern. You have no idea what its Latin name is. You have no idea what chemical compounds it might contain. But you collect it with the same care and reverence you gave to your mysterious white flower. It is a plant with a story, and you realize now that every plant has a story. Your job is not just to collect the plant, but to listen to its story, too. The weeks turn into months. The rhythm of your life is now the rhythm of the trail the pre-minus don't chill. The long days in the saddle, the quiet evenings of pressing a note minus taking by the fire. You have pushed deeper into the Sierra Madre than you ever intended, drawn forward by the endless promise of new valleys and unexplored slopes. Your collection has grown from a handful of specimens into a vast and valuable treasure. You have filled every page of newspaper you brought with you. Your plant press is bulging. Canvas sacks that once held beans and rice are now stuffed with carefully dried and bundled plants. You have, by your own count, collected thousands of specimens. The expedition has been a success beyond your wildest dreams. But now, you face a new and daunting logistical challenge: how to get this fragile, irreplaceable collection out of the wilderness and back to civilization. You and Remigio begin the long, slow journey back towards the coast. The trail that was once filled with the excitement of discovery is now fraught with the anxiety of preservation. Every river crossing, every potential rainstorm, is a threat to your precious cargo. A single dunking in a stream could ruin months of work, turning your carefully pressed specimens into a moldy, useless pulp. This is a mainstream, practical concern that haunted every field collector of the era. The journey home was often more perilous for the collection than the journey out. You finally arrive, dusty and bone-minus weary, back in a small coastal town. From here, you must arrange for your collection to be shipped to Berkeley. This is not a simple matter of dropping a package at the post office. You are in a remote part of Mexico in 1925. The infrastructure is minimal. You spend several days in the town, a whirlwind of logistics. First, you must build the crate. You hire a local carpenter to construct sturdy wooden boxes. Then comes the critical task of packing. You line each crate with oilcloth, a heavy, waterproof canvas, to protect the contents from moisture. This is a crucial, if low-minus piece of field equipment. Inside the oilcloth, you begin to pack the bundled specimens. You pack them tightly to prevent them from shifting and breaking during the long journey. You interleave the bundles with a special, moisture-minus absorbing paper you brought with you. And here's a wonderfully weird and specific detail from the history of botanical collection: the fight against insects. A pressed plant specimen is a delicious meal for all sorts of tiny beetles and booklight. To protect your collection, you have to poison it. You brought with you a container of a chemical called naphthalene, the same substance used in mothballs. You sprinkle it liberally between the layers of plants. The entire operation is conducted in a cloud of its pungent, chemical smell. It is the perfume of preservation. The debate among museum conservators of the future will be endless. Was the use of toxic chemicals like naphthalene and, later, mercuric chloride a necessary evil to preserve these invaluable collections? Or did it create a toxic legacy, making the specimens hazardous for future generations of researchers to handle? Many old herbarium cabinets still carry warning labels because of the poisonous chemicals used by collectors like you. Finally, the crates are packed and nailed shut. You paint the address on the side in big block letters: DEPAOTME and TOFBOTANY. UNIVERSITYOFCALFRNIA DL B Berkeley D HELEY CALIFORNIA USA. You arrange for the crates to be transported by mule to the nearest major port, where they will be loaded onto a steamship for the long sea voyage to San Francisco. You watch as the mules, laden with your wooden treasure chests, disappear down the dusty road. You have entrusted your entire life's work, the physical embodiment of your dream, to a chain of strangers, to the whims of weather, and to the reliability of a steam engine. You will not see your collection again for many months. You have no way of knowing if it will arrive safely. All you can do is wait and hope. You pay Remigio his final wages. You try to express your gratitude for his skill, his patience, his shared knowledge. He simply nods, touches the brim of his hat, and melts back into the landscape that is his home. You are alone again. You have sent your work ahead of you. Now, you must follow it. You book passage on a small, rustic coastal steamer that will eventually take you back to the United States. As you stand on the deck, watching the rugged coastline of Mexico fade into the haze, you feel a profound sense of accomplishment, mixed with a deep, gnawing anxiety. You have done the work. Now, all you can do is pray that it survives the journey home. The journey home is a slow, unsettling period of limbo. The rusty coastal steamer chugs its way up the coast, the days marked only by the shifting colors of the sea and sky. The intense, single-minded focus of the expedition has been replaced by a quiet, gnawing uncertainty. Are your crates safe? Are they on a ship, in a warehouse, or lying forgotten on a dusty dock somewhere? You have no way of knowing. You are caught between two worlds, no longer a field collector in the wilds of Mexico, but not yet the person you will be when you return to Berkeley. When you finally arrive back in San Francisco, the city feels alien. The cool, damp fog, which once felt like a comforting blanket, now feels oppressive. The noise of the traffic, the crowds of people, the frantic energy of the city, it all feels jarring and unnatural after the profound quiet of the mountains. You make your way to the university. You walk across the campus, the same paths you walked as a timid, out-place student, but you feel like a different person. Your face is weathered by the sun and wind. Your hands are rough and calloused. You are thinner, tougher. You are no longer just a woman who attends lectures. You are a woman who has fallen off a mule and gotten back on. You go straight to the botany department, to the herbarium. Your heart is pounding. You push open the heavy oak door and step into the familiar, quiet room with its tall wooden cabinets and its smell of old paper and mothballs. A young graduate student, a man you vaguely remember from one of your classes, looks up from his work at a large table. He sees you, and his eyes widen in recognition, and then in shock. Ynes Mexia, you're back. The news of your return spreads quickly. Professors and students emerge from their offices and labs. They gather around you, their faces a mixture of surprise, relief, and a new, undeniable respect. You are no longer the eccentric old lady. You are a curiosity, a survivor, a story. They bombard you with questions. Did you find anything interesting? Was it dangerous? Where are the specimens? They are on their way, you say, your voice quiet but steady. And then begins the wait. Weeks pass. Every day, you go to the herbarium, a knot of anxiety tightening in your stomach. Every day, there is no news. You begin to fear the worst, that the crates were lost at sea, destroyed by moisture, or consumed by insects. Your entire expedition, your great triumph, could be reduced to nothing more than a ghost, a story with no physical proof. This was the constant terror of the long-distance collector, the very real possibility that the fruits of their labor would never reach their destination. Then, one morning, you arrive at the herbarium, and there, sitting in the middle of the floor, are three large, rough-hewn wooden crates. Your crates. They are battered and dusty from their long journey, but they are here. A small crowd gathers as a lab assistant pries open the first crate with a crowbar. The screech of the nails is the most beautiful sound you have ever heard. He lifts the lid. You hold your breath. The pungent, chemical smell of naphthalene fills the air, a good sign. You peer inside. There they are, your bundles of pressed plants, dry, safe, and perfectly preserved. A collected sigh of relief ripples through the room. Your expedition is not a ghost. It is real. This moment marks your true arrival. The work of unpacking, mounting, and identifying the specimens will take months, even years. But, in this instant, as you look upon the tangible proof of your labor, you are transformed. You are no longer Ynes Mexia, the student. You are Ynes Mexia, the botanist, the collector, This is a mainstream historical moment in the narrative of science, the return of the explorer. It is the moment when the data from the fringe is brought back to the center, ready to be integrated into the body of scientific knowledge. The physical journey is over, but the scientific journey of your collection is just beginning. And there is a fascinating debate among historians about this moment. Does the value of the collection lie in its raw, unanalyzed state, as a pure snapshot of biodiversity, or is its true value only unlocked after it has been catalogued, identified, and studied by the experts at the university? It's a question about where scientific value is created in the field or in the lab. You don't care about such debates. You only feel a profound, overwhelming sense of gratitude and relief. You reach into the crate and lift out the first bundle. It is your mysterious white flower, the one from the shaded ravine. You hold it in your hands, a fragile, triumphant relic. You are home. The Herbarium at Berkeley becomes your new home. The dusty, quiet room filled with the ghosts of plants is no longer a place of tedious study, but a vibrant workshop, a laboratory, and a sanctuary. The return of your Mexican collection has fundamentally changed your status. You are no longer seen as a student, an amateur, or an eccentric hobbyist. You are a field botanist of proven ability, a colleague. The next year of your life is a period of intense, focused, and deeply satisfying work. You spend your days at a large wooden table, surrounded by your precious specimens. The process is slow and methodical. Each plant must be carefully unbundled. Then comes the delicate process of mounting. You take a single pressed plant and arrange it on a large sheet of stiff, archival quality paper. You glue it down, using a special, non-acidic paste. You might also use small strips of gummed linen tape to secure the thicker stems. It is a craft that requires patience and a delicate touch. Once the plant is mounted, the real intellectual work begins: identification. Use it with a microscope, dissecting the tiny, dried flowers, counting the stamens, examining the seeds. You compare what you see with the detailed descriptions in Professor Jepson's manuals under the botanical texts. You consult the vast reference collection in the herbarium cabinets, comparing your plant to previously collected specimens. This is the painstaking, unglamorous, yet essential work of taxonomy. It is a process of scientific detective work, and you discover you have a talent for it. Do I, trained by thousands of hours of observation in the field and at the university, is sharp. You can spot the subtle differences in leaf shape or flower structure that distinguish one species from another, and you begin to find the new things. You confirm that the little white flower from the ravine is not just a new species, but a new genus, a major discovery. You find dozens of other plants that are new to science, previously unrecorded species. Each one is a small, quiet thrill, a confirmation of the value of your long, difficult journey. This is the mainstream process of how a scientific understanding of biodiversity grows, not in a single eureka moment, but through the patient, cumulative work of researchers like you. Here's a small, quirky detail of this process. When you discover a new species, you have the honor of giving it a name. The name must be in Latin, following the rules of binomial nomenclature. Often, a collector will name a plant after a respected mentor, a supportive colleague, or the person who funded the expedition. Sometimes, they will name it after the place it was found. It is a small act of immortality, a way of etching a name into the permanent record of science. As you work, your reputation grows. Botanists from other institutions, from Harvard and the Smithsonian, hear about your massive, well-documented collection from a previously under-explored region. They write to you, requesting to borrow certain specimens for their own research. You are becoming a node in a global network of scientific exchange. But, as you sit in the quiet, dusty herbarium, surrounded by the fruits of your labor, a new and familiar restlessness begins to stir. The work is satisfying, but it is not the work you love most. Your heart is not here, in this quiet room of dead plants. It is out there, in the sun and the wind and the dust. The success of your Mexican expedition has not quenched your ambition. It has poured fuel on it. You have proven to yourself and to the world that you can do this. The whispers of doubt have been silenced. You are a capable, professional field collector. So what's next? You find yourself back in the university library, but this time you are not looking at textbooks. You are looking at maps, not of Mexico, but of places further south, much further south. Your eyes trace the vast, green, unexplored heart of a continent, the Amazon basin. You read the accounts of the few legendary explorers who have ventured into it, von Martius, Spruce, Willis. Their stories are of immense hardship, of disease, of impenetrable jungles, and of a biodiversity so vast it defies imagination. It is the greatest botanical frontier left on Earth. The debate among geographers and explorers of your time is fierce. What is the best way to approach the Amazon? Up the river from the coast, or down from the mountains that form its western edge? Each route presents its own monumental challenges. It is a place that has broken many well-funded, male-led expeditions. A new dream begins to form in your mind, a dream even more audacious than the last one. You will go to South America. You will travel the length of the Amazon, from the high Andes to the Atlantic. The idea is terrifying. It is, by the standards of your day, completely insane, and you know, with a certainty that both thrills and frightens you, that it is what you must do. Your work in the herbarium is not an end. It is just a preparation for the next, even greater, journey. The decision to go to South America is less of a choice and more of an inevitability. The quiet, meticulous work in the herbarium, while important, feels like a prolonged pause between breaths. The real breathing, you now know, happens in the wild. Your plan is breathtaking in its ambition, a 3-year expedition that will take you from the high Andes of Peru and Ecuador, down the eastern slopes, and into the vast, sprawling basin of the Amazon River, following it all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. You are now in your late 50s, an age when most people are contemplating a quiet retirement. You are planning the most arduous and dangerous journey of your life. This time, the reaction from the scientific community is different. The whispers of doubt are gone, replaced by a buzz of genuine excitement and support. You are no longer the amateur eccentric. You are Ynes Mexia, the accomplished Mexican collector. Institutions that once regarded you with suspicion now offer their support. The University of California provides you with official credentials. The Gray Herbarium at Harvard and the Field Museum in Chicago provide small grants to help fund your trip. In exchange for a share of the specimens you collect, you have become a professional, a freelance botanical explorer commissioned by the great scientific institutions of your day. This was a common model for financing expeditions in the era, a decentralized, entrepreneurial approach to science. You spend months in preparation. This journey will be far more complex than your trip to Mexico. You will be traveling through multiple countries, dealing with different languages, currencies, and bureaucracies. You will be facing not just mountains and deserts, but dense, tropical rainforests with a whole new set of challenges: torrential rains, oppressive humidity, and a bestiary of insects and diseases for which you are completely unprepared. Your packing is a masterclass in field logistics. You design and commission special equipment. You have oilcloth bags made to keep your plant presses dry in the constant rain. You pack a lightweight, collapsible canoe for navigating the Amazon's tributaries. You include a formidable medical kit, filled with quinine for malaria, iodine for sterilizing water, and bandages for inevitable injuries. Here's a small, weirdly specific detail about your preparations. One of your greatest concerns is the paper for your plant presses. In the extreme humidity of the Amazon, drying the bottles and newspapers will be a constant, near-minus impossible battle. Mold is your greatest enemy. To combat it, you pack an enormous quantity of drying papers, far more than you think you will need, and you also pack a special, ventilated drying rack that can be set up over a low fire. Your entire method is geared towards a relentless war against fungus. The debate among the historians who study the history of exploration often touches on the great man theory. We see the heroic figure of the explorer, and we often forget the immense, invisible network of support and technology that made their journeys possible. Your careful, almost obsessive, preparation shows the other side of the story. Exploration is not just about courage, it's about logistics, planning, and having the right gear. In 1929, you set sail for Peru. When you arrive, you do not stay in the coastal cities. You immediately make your way into the highlands, to the spine of the Andes. This is the first leg of your great transit. Your plan is to collect from the highest elevations first, then work your way down, meticulously documenting the changing flora as the altitude drops. The Andes are a different world from the mountains of Mexico. They are higher, colder, more immense. The air is thin and hard to breathe. You hire local guides, men who are descendants of the Inca, who know these high, lonely places as intimately as you know the streets of San Francisco. With them, you travel on foot and by mule, through rugged, treeless landscapes known as the Puna. You spend months here, in this high minus altitude world, collecting the tough, low minus growing plants that survive in the thin soil and harsh winds. You are cold, you are often tired, but you are filled with a profound sense of joy. You are at the very beginning of your great scientific journey, standing on the roof of a continent, a small, stubborn, 59-year-old woman, ready to walk downhill to the sea. From the high, windswept plains of the Andes, you begin your descent. It is a journey through a series of breathtakingly distinct worlds, a transect through the very architecture of life. You walk and ride your way down the eastern slopes of the mountains, and with every 1,000 feet you drop an elevation. The entire ecosystem around you transforms. The sparse, tough vegetation of the Puna gives way to the cloud forests, a mystical, fairy tale landscape perpetually shrouded in mist. Here, every tree is draped in a thick, green cloak of mosses, lichens, and ferns. Orchids with strange, beautiful flowers sprout directly from the tree bark. The air is cool and damp, and the world is 1,000 shades of green. It is a botanist's paradise, and you collect with a feverish intensity. Your plant presses filling with the delicate, moisture-loving flora of this ethereal world. Lower still, the cloud forest gives way to the montane forest, a steeper, more rugged landscape of deep canyons and rushing rivers. The trees are taller here, the canopy thicker. This is where your journey becomes truly perilous. The trails are often little more than muddy, slippery tracks cut into the mountainside. You cross raging rivers on swaying, terrifying rope bridges that look like they were woven from spider bears. You adapt. You learn to trust the quiet competence of your local guides. You learn to live with the constant dampness, the mud that seems to permanently cake your boots, and the low -grade fever that sometimes sweeps through your body. And then, finally, you reach the bottom. You stand at the edge of the great, flat, green expanse, the Amazon. From here, the nature of your travel changes completely. The mules are left behind. Your new highway is the river. You have a small, motorized launch for the larger rivers, but for the smaller tributaries, the IGA rapes, you use the collapsible canoe you brought from California. This is where you truly travel alone. You hire local boatmen to take you to a remote village, and from there, you venture out by yourself in your canoe for days at a time, paddling up the narrow, blackwater streams that wind through the dense, seemingly impenetrable jungle. This is a mainstream image of Amazonian exploration, the lone figure in a canoe. But your reality is different. You are not a romantic adventurer seeking to conquer the wild. You are a scientist at work. You paddle, you observe, you collect, you beach your canoe on a muddy bank, scramble into the jungle, and return with your canvas sack full of specimens. Your evenings are spent on a sandbar, by a small fire, carefully pressing your plants, your notebook filling with observations, your ears attuned to the strange, overwhelming symphony of the nocturnal rainforest. The air is thick with the calls of frogs, the chirping of insects, and the bizarre, yet unfightable shrieks of things unseen in the darkness. Here's a small, quirky detail of your methodology. You have developed a system. You learn that the easiest way to collect specimens from the high, unreachable canopies to follow the monkeys. You watch the troops of monkeys as they move through the treetops, and you collect the flowers, fruits, and branches that they drop or discard. It is a clever, resourceful, and deeply practical solution to one of the greatest challenges of rainforest botany. You are, in a sense, collaborating with the monkeys. The very idea of a woman in her early 60s, alone in a canoe in the Amazon, was so far outside the realm of possibility for your time that it was almost invisible. The historical debate about women in science often focuses on the barriers they faced in the laboratory and the university. But you are facing a different set of barriers: physical, social, and logistical, and you are overcoming them with quiet, methodical competence. You are not just defying social norms. You are redefining the very image of who a field scientist could be. You spend more than 2 years like this, moving through the vast network of rivers that make up the upper Amazon. You are often sick. You are constantly battling the humidity that threatens to rot your specimens. You are lonely, but you are also experiencing a sense of freedom and purpose that you have never known. You are a small, solitary figure in a vast, grained world, and you are exactly where you are supposed to be. The mail comes infrequently in the depths of the Amazon. It arrives with a trading boat or a missionary launch, a bundle of letters in parcels that have been on a long, slow journey from another world. For months at a time, you are completely cut off from your life back in California. Your only connection, the occasional, delayed package. One day, after a long and difficult trip up a remote tributary, you return to the small mission station that serves as your base camp. A packet of mail is waiting for you. It is thick with letters from colleagues at Berkeley and other institutions, and there is a heavy, rolled manuscript containing scientific journals. You save the journals for last. You open the letters first, hungry for news. They are filled with words of encouragement and professional updates. A colleague at Harvard writes to thank you for a shipment of specimens you sent months ago. He thinks he has found 3 new species of orchids among them. A professor at the Smithsonian asks if you have managed to collect any seeds from a particular type of palm tree. You are remote, but active, hub in a global scientific network. Finally, you unroll the tube of journals. The dry, academic paper feels strange and foreign in the humid jungle air. You scan the tables of contents, and then you see it. It's an article in a major botanical journal, written by one of the top taxonomists at Berkeley, a man named Blake. The title of the article is A New Genus of Asteraceae from Sinaloa, Mexico. Your heart stops. You unroll the journal, your hands trembling so much you can barely hold it steady. You find the page, and there, in the cold, black minus and minus white print of the journal, is the confirmation of your greatest discovery. The article begins with a formal, Latin diagnosis of the new genus. Then comes the English description, detailing the unique arrangement of the involucral bracts, the specific shape of the corolla, all the subtle characteristics that you first noticed in that shaded ravine. Dr. Blake confirms your initial, hopeful suspicion. It is, without a doubt, a type of plant completely new to science. But it is the next part that makes you gasp. The name. Every new genus must be given a name. And Blake, in recognition of the person who found it, has named it Mexianthus, Mexia minus and thus, the Mexia flower. This is the highest honor a botanist can receive. To have a species named after Ynes Mexia or a Mexianthus is a significant achievement. But to have an entire genus, a whole branch of the tree of life, bear your name, it is a form of scientific immortality. It is a permanent, public acknowledgement of your contribution, a name that will be written in botanical textbooks for centuries to come. This is the mainstream, universally understood system of scientific honor and recognition. You read the dedication in the article. Dr. Blake writes named in honor of its discoverer, Mrs. Ynes Mexia, whose indefatigable efforts in the field have brought to light this and many other remarkable novelties. Indefatigable, tireless. You sit there, in a dusty, remote mission station in the Amazon, the sounds of the jungle pressing in around you, and you hold the journal in your hands. A wave of emotion, so powerful it almost knocks the wind out of you, washes over you. You think of your 50-year-old self, lost and adrift in the fogs of San Francisco. You think of the struggle to learn the Latin, the grueling days in the south, the agony of your broken ribs, the constant, lonely battle against the elements. And it has all lead to this, to a single, beautiful, perfect Latin word, Mexianthus. There is a small, quirky detail about botanical names. The rules of nomenclature are very strict. Once a name is validly published, it is permanent. It cannot be changed. Your name is now, officially and forever, a part of the scientific lexicon. The historical debate about credit in science often focuses on the tensions and rivalries, but this is the other side of the story. It is a story of generosity, of mentorship, and of a scientific community that, in this instance, chose to honor the contributions of one of its most unlikely and remarkable members. You carefully roll up the journal. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the clearing. The howler monkeys are beginning their evening chorus. You feel a profound sense of peace. You didn't set out on this journey seeking fame or recognition. You set out seeking purpose, seeking a way to quiet the restless feeling in your soul. But here, in this remote corner of the world, you have found both. The years pass in a blur of steamships, mules, and canoes. The Amazon expedition is a resounding success, cementing your reputation as one of the world's foremost botanical collectors. But you do not stop. The restlessness, the insatiable curiosity that first drove you into the mountains is now the engine of your life. You are in your 60s now, a smooth, tough, with a minus-beaten woman with a gaze as sharp and clear as a hawk's. You have become a legendary figure in the world of botany. Stories about your adventures circulate at universities and museums. They tell of how you faced down a jaguar, how you calmly navigated a political uprising in Ecuador, how you lived for months with indigenous tribes in the remote corners of Brazil. Most of the stories are exaggerations, the kind of myths that naturally grow up around a figure who defies easy categorization. You are not a swashbuckling adventurer. You are a scientist, methodical in focus, but the stories serve a purpose. They are a testament to a life lived without compromise, a life dedicated to a single, consuming passion. You launch other expeditions. You go to Alaska, to the windswept, treeless tundra, where you collect tiny, resilient Arctic flowers. You return to Mexico, to explore new regions you missed on your first trip. Each journey adds thousands of new specimens to the world's collections. On one of these later trips, back in the familiar, rugged mountains of Mexico, you take a day to rest. You are older now, and the trail takes a greater toll. You find a spot on a high ridge, overlooking a vast, silent valley, much like the one where you took your first Sierra Club hike so many years ago. You sit on a sun-minus warmed rock, your battered plant pressed beside you. The air is thin and clean. A hawk circles on the thermal current high above. You look out at the panorama of mountains and sky, and you let your mind drift back over the years. You think about the strange, winding path your life has taken. The unhappy young woman in Washington, D.C., the failed poultry farmer, the most 50-year-old divorcee walking in the San Francisco fog. It feels like you are thinking about someone else, a person from a different lifetime. It is hard to connect that person with the woman you are now, sitting on this mountain ridge, your hands stained with the earth of a dozen different countries. This moment of reflection brings up a core question that biographers and historians constantly grapple with. What is the true shape of a life? Is it a steady, linear progression? Or is it a series of ruptures and transformations, of different selves living in sequence? Your life is a powerful argument for the latter. You did not simply evolve. You were reborn, completely and utterly, in middle age. You think about the sheer, physical reality of your work, the tens of thousands of miles you have traveled by mule and by foot, the hundreds of plants you have pressed and documented. You remember the small, specific moments, the thrill of finding Mexianthus, The quiet wisdom in Remigio's eyes, the profound silence of the Amazon night. Here's a small, poignant detail about your life. You have no children. Your marriages were childless. In your era, for a woman, this was often seen as a mark of failure, a life unfulfilled. But as you sit on this ridge, you realize that you have had children. They are the thousands of pressed, dried plants that bear your name and your collection number in herbaria around the world. They are your legacy. They are the children of your passion. The debate about what constitutes a successful life is, of course, endless and unanswerable. Society in your time has a very clear set of metrics for a woman: marriage, home, family. By these standards, your life for its first 50-5 years was a failure. But you have created your own metric for success, a life of purpose, of discovery, of deep and unwavering engagement with the natural world. The sun begins to dip towards the horizon, painting the clouds in fiery colors. A cool evening breeze stirs the pines. It is time to make camp. It is time to start the fire, to press the day's plants, to continue the work. You get up, your movements a little stiff, a little slower than they used to be, but still filled with a deep, quiet purpose. You pick up your plant press. You are not a young woman, that you are not old. You are a botanist, and there are still so many plants to find. Your final expedition takes you back to Mexico, the country that first answered your call. You are in your late 60s, and the years of hard travel have taken their toll. You move more slowly. The aches in your bones are constant, low -level hum, but your eyes are as sharp as ever, your curiosity undiminished. You are in a remote, mountainous region of Oaxaca, collecting in a high -altitude oak forest. The work is familiar. The rhythm of it is ingrained in you as breathing. You find a species of lupulus that you think might be new. You kneel in the damp earth, your movements slow and deliberate, and carefully dig it up. You record the details in your notebook, your handwriting still precise, if a little shaky. But you feel a weariness that is deeper than the usual trail fatigue. A persistent pain in your stomach that you have been ignoring for months has become a more constant, unwelcome companion. One evening, sitting by your small campfire, you know it is time. The work is not done, the work is never done. The world is too full of uncollected plants, but your part in it is drawing to a close. You pack your specimens with the same meticulous care you always have, and you begin the long journey out of the mountains for the last time. You return to Berkeley, not as a triumphant explorer, but as a quiet, tired woman seeking a doctor's care. The diagnosis is stomach cancer. It is advanced. There is nothing to be done. You spend your final months not in a hospital, but in a small house near the university, a place where you can still smell the eucalyptus trees on the breeze. The scientific community that once viewed you as an oddity now rallies around you. Your colleagues, the professors and students who have become your true family, are constant visitors. They bring you books. They bring you news from the world of botany. And, most importantly, they bring you your plants. They bring you the mounting sheets from your last expedition, and you sit propped up in bed, a magnifying glass in your hand, making the final identifications, adding your notes in a weak but steady hand. You are a scientist to the very end. You die in 1942, at the age of 71. In the last 16 years of your life, since you first enrolled at Berkeley, you have embarked on a career of almost unbelievable productivity. This is the mainstream, astonishing fact of your life's work. You have collected an estimated 150 thorough specimens. You have discovered over 500 new species of plants. You have traveled to the most remote corners of a continent, redefining what was possible for a woman in science. Your legacy is not a monument to stone or a great fortune. It is quiet, and it is green. It is housed in the tall, silent cabinets of herbaria around the world. It is in the specimens that bear your name, Mexianthus, Ynes Mexia, and hundreds of others. Here's a small, beautiful detail about that legacy. Every specimen you collected is a physical data point, a snapshot of biodiversity in a specific time and place, decades after your death. Scientists you will never meet will use these specimens for research you could never have imagined. They will extract DNA from a leaf you collected in the Andes to study the evolutionary history of a plant family. They will analyze the chemical composition of a flower you pressed in the Amazon to search for new medicines. They will use your precise location data to study the effects of climate change on plant distribution. Your quiet, patient work by 1,000 lonely campfires has become a permanent, invaluable gift to the future. The debate among historians will continue. Was Ynes Mexia a feminist icon who consciously shattered barriers? Or was she simply a deeply eccentric and stubborn individual who was driven by a personal passion so powerful that she was oblivious to the barriers in the first place? The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in the middle. You were not trying to make a statement. You were just trying to find the next plant. Your physical presence is gone, but your work endures. It sits there, in the quiet, climate-controlled rooms of museums and universities, waiting for the next generation of students and scientists to open the cabinet, to pull out a sheet of paper with your name on it, and to ask a new set of questions. Your conversation with the natural world, the one you started so long ago on a mountain in California, is still going on. And now, your own journey for the night is drawing to a close. The story of the determined botanist begins to fade, its sharp details softening into a gentle, green landscape in your mind. The image of the remote mountain, the quiet rainforest, the dusty herbarium, they all merge into a single, peaceful feeling of purpose and quiet accomplishment. You feel the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet engine carrying you towards the shores of deep sleep. The world outside, with its complexities and its demands, seems very far away. You are in a safe, quiet place, a clearing in the woods of your own mind. The air is calm, and the light is soft. There are no more facts to learn, no more dates to remember. There is only the feeling of a life well lived, of a path found, of a quiet and profound connection to the world. You let that feeling of peace settle over you like a warm, soft blanket of moss. You have done your work for the day. You have walked your own rail. And now, it is time for a well-minded and dreamless rest, in the quiet sanctuary of the night. The end of the article. Good night.